If you're a fan of Ohuhu alcohol markers, then you'll be excited to hear that ink refills are now available. In this video, I'll show you how to use them. In addition to demonstrating 2 different methods for refilling your Ohuhu markers, I'll also answer a few common questions. How do you know how much ink to add to your Ohuhu marker? How do you know when it's time to refill your Ohuhu marker? How long does an Ohuhu marker last? Ohuhu sent me 24 ink refills for me to try out, but this is not a sponsored video. First, I want to quickly point out that these ink refills are for alcohol markers only. So if you have Ohuhu's water-based markers, these ink refills can't be used with those markers because it's a totally different type of ink. So let's take a closer look at these Ohuhu ink refill bottles. The bottles are clear with a secure screw top that covers a long nozzle. There's a little scale printed on the side, so you can see exactly how much ink you have left. The color codes are on the bottle. You'll notice here that there are 2 codes on this bottle, one for Honolulu and one for Oahu. The cap just has one color name and code, which is for the Honolulu markers. If you're wondering why there are 2 color codes, let me explain. Ohuhu sells 4 different types of alcohol markers that are compatible with these inks: Honolulu, Oahu, Kala, and Molokai, but the color codes are not consistent across the different series. This means that not all colors are shared across the series, with some series having more colors than others, and when they do share a color in common, sometimes the color code will be different. As I filmed this video in late June of 2023, Ohuhu ink refills are currently available in 50 colors, plus the colorless blender with more colors on the way. You can purchase them individually on Ohuhu's website or on Amazon. I'll post the links below this video. To figure out which refills are available for the specific Ohuhu markers that you own, you can either browse this color chart, which I'll link to below, or go to the Ohuhu website and type the color code you're looking for into their search bar. As you can see, this color is available as an ink refill. In terms of price, Ohuhu ink refill bottles contain 16 milliliters of ink for $5. Compare that to their closest competitor, Copic, whose ink refills contain less ink, 12 milliliters, and cost slightly more, currently $5.39 on Blick. These 16 milliliter bottles contain enough ink to fill a Honolulu marker 5 times, an Oahu marker 8 times, a Kala marker 8 times, and a Molokai marker 3 times. Now I'll show you 2 different ways to refill your Ohuhu markers. I'll be demonstrating on an Ohuhu Honolulu marker. When brand new, an Ohuhu Honolulu marker will typically weigh between 16 and 16.3 grams, with both caps on. With both caps off, the full Honolulu marker weighs around 11.4 grams. This number will come in handy when I demonstrate how much ink to add, because our goal will be to refill the empty marker until it weighs around 11.4 grams, just like this full one. First, I'll show you the drip method. Uncap both ends of the marker to balance the pressure in the marker barrel. Hold the marker at a 45-degree angle and gently squeeze the refill bottle to carefully drip the ink directly onto the brush nib or the chisel nib, 1 drop at a time. The fine nib is too small to catch the ink easily and may cause a mess. Don't squeeze too hard because you don't want too much ink to squirt out at once. Let the ink soak into the nib for a few seconds before you squeeze more ink onto it. The convenient thing about the drip method is that you don't have to remove the marker nib. So if you're in the flow of coloring, but the marker is getting streaky, you can add more ink to your marker this way without disrupting your creative flow. If you want to add a lot of ink to your Ohuhu marker, then this second method is the easiest and quickest way to do that. Uncap both ends of the marker. Use tweezers to carefully pull out the nib. If you don't have tweezers to remove your nib, you could fold up a paper towel and use it to carefully grip the marker nib and pull it out. Hold the marker upright and insert the nozzle of the ink refill bottle into the marker. Gently squeeze a few times, waiting at least 3 seconds in between squeezes. When you're done, remove the ink refill bottle from the marker and carefully reinsert the nib into the marker. Allow a few minutes for the ink to fully soak into the marker core before using it. If you're enjoying this video and finding it helpful, please click the like button and subscribe to see more of my art tips and tutorials. Here are some tips for refilling your Ohuhu markers. Always refill your markers on top of scrap paper, paper towels, or rags, as the ink can easily stain surfaces, and in many cases, it's non-removable. Keep the ink refills and the markers away from direct sunlight and extreme heat, which could cause color fading or degradation of the ink. Use your markers and refills in a well-ventilated area. Avoid contact with eyes, mouth, and clothing. Now that you know how to refill an Ohuhu marker, you might be wondering, how do you know how much ink to add to your Ohuhu marker? This can be tricky if you're new to refilling your markers, but it's important because you don't want to overfill your markers, because if there's too much ink in the marker, then the ink could blob out all over your artwork. For this reason, I like to be as precise as possible when I refill my markers, so I use a digital scale to weigh the markers before and after adding ink. These small scales are pretty inexpensive. You can usually find them on Amazon for between $7 and $10. I'll post a link below this video. First, weigh the marker that you want to refill. We know from earlier that a full marker with both caps off weighs around 11.4 grams. So our goal is to add enough ink to get our marker back up to that weight. This marker currently weighs 8.68 grams, so I squeeze the bottle a few times to add some ink to the marker. Then I reinsert the nib and weigh the marker again. Now it weighs 9.42 grams, so I want to add more ink. I remove the nib again and squeeze more ink into it, then reinsert the nib and weigh it again. Now it weighs 11.12 grams, so it's pretty full of ink. To help keep track of how much ink you're adding to your marker, you could also use the scale that's printed on the side of the refill bottle. For example, if your marker is completely dry, it will take approximately 3 milliliters of ink to top it up, but it's unlikely that your marker will ever be that dry. To be honest, I rarely consult the scale on the refill bottle because I find it's a lot easier to simply weigh the marker to make sure it's as full as I want it to be. Moving on to our next question. How do you know when it's time to refill your Ohuhu marker? When your marker starts to make streaky lines that look like this, then it's time to refill it with ink. Another indication that it's time to refill your marker is when it becomes harder to blend with that marker, because there's not enough ink in the marker to make smooth blends. A squeaky sound can also be an indicator. And as you've already learned, you can also weigh your marker, and if it weighs 15 grams or below with both caps on, then it's time to add more ink to the marker. By now, you may be wondering how often you'll need to refill your markers, so let's figure out how long does an Ohuhu marker last. Here's a brand new Ohuhu Honolulu PB7 pastel blue marker. Let's see how long this marker will last by seeing how many pieces of paper we can fill in with this one single Ohuhu Honolulu marker. I'm using cardstock for this experiment because cardstock is a good low-cost paper that you can use with alcohol markers. I'm just going back and forth with the chisel tip of this marker. You can see that the coverage is really great at first because the marker is really juicy and full of ink. If you're new to alcohol markers, you might think these lines look streaky because some areas are darker than others, but this actually isn't what streakiness looks like. Whenever you overlap a marker on top of itself, it will be darker in that overlapped area. So as I go back and forth, I'm partially overlapping the previous line, which is why some areas are darker than others. Now we've filled up 1.5 pages and the marker is starting to get streaky. Here you can see the white of the paper partially showing through, so that's a sign that your marker is streaky and starting to get low on ink. After we fill up the second piece of paper, the marker now weighs 9.42 grams with both caps off. So we've already used up 2 grams of ink. Let's continue using up this marker to see how much longer it will last before it completely runs out of ink. Now, I know you wouldn't normally use a marker this way, filling page after page with just one color, so your markers will last you a lot longer than this. But this is still a useful experiment because when we're done, we'll weigh the marker to see how much an empty Ohuhu Honolulu marker weighs. So by now, we've filled up 5 pages and the marker is definitely looking streaky. After coloring in 5 full pieces of paper, the marker now weighs 8.89 grams. Normally, I'd go ahead and refill the marker before it even gets this streaky, but for this experiment, let's continue using up the marker until it totally runs out. So there you go! In our experiment, one Ohuhu Honolulu marker lasted for 8 full pages. And now the marker weighs 8.68 grams, almost 3 grams less than a completely full marker. If your marker ever gets this dry, you'll want to refill it as soon as you can because nibs that are left dry for too long can become damaged, and then you'll need to replace them. I found that these Ohuhu ink refill bottles are really easy to use. The cap screws off and on easily and feels nice and secure when it's closed, so I don't have any concerns about spillage. The bottles are a convenient size and shape, so you can easily store them in your marker case along with your Ohuhu markers. I like the extra long nozzle, which inserts far enough into your marker that you can avoid a mess. When squeezing the bottle, you'll feel a bit of resistance because the bottle is not designed to be too squishy. If the bottle was too easy to squeeze, then too much ink would come squirting out. Ohuhu ink refill bottles are actually very similar to Copic ink refill bottles in terms of the quality, shape, and construction of the bottles. Ohuhu ink refills are more budget-friendly than Copic ink refills, which makes them a wonderful addition to the Ohuhu line of alcohol marker products, making them an even more viable competitor to Copic's. It's great that these refills can be purchased individually, and it will be even better when more colors are offered. If you want to learn more about using alcohol markers, check out my Alcohol Markers playlist, where I share my favorite alcohol marker tips as well as time lapses, so you can see step by step how to create gorgeous art with your alcohol markers. See you there!